What's up, guys? It's BlazeCritical here. Today we'll cover the latest release of the Epstein files about Trump. This just came today. So before we get started, just a couple of background. So Trump pretty much, as one of his campaign promises, was to release the Epstein files. Since then, he has only, after mounting pressure, released a redacted version of the file, if I'm understanding this correctly. And they have been very shady. I think the administration has been very vague about certain questions around this topic, about how Trump is involved specifically. And because of those mixed signals, it's definitely one of his weaker points as the president to have this scandal on him. Now, there's no definitive proof, but it is likely that Trump did have something to do with it based on sort of their reaction. Because if they have nothing to hide, then they would just like release the file, right? But here's my take, right? I think no matter what, Trump should just like release all the files because he is the president, and this is one of his campaign promises, and this will probably do well for him for the polls and also for the people to know the truth. Like, even if he is implicated, right, it's just the right thing to do to release the files for the public to see. Now, historically though, as elected presidents, there are rarely any consequences, and even the biggest scandals doesn't really force anything to happen. I think the closest thing is like Nixon. I think Nixon had a scandal. Maybe he felt some pressure, but ultimately the official narrative is that he resigned, right? Maybe by external pressure, but he resigned himself. So there's no precedent at the moment to have a scandal so big that the president sort of just was able to be forcibly removed. That has not happened yet. And I think unless anything short of a forcibly removed, I don't think Trump's going to ever step down. So at least not during the term, right? So this is the first interesting part. The second interesting part is I think he kind of shot himself in the foot because he was like, I'm going to release all these files, but then was being shady. Then he released a redacted version. Yeah. There's this whole kind of scandal. But let's see what the new findings are from the new documents.
Just out with a new blistering response for Democrats after they released emails written by Jeffrey Epstein that referenced President Trump. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
It is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government. Why are White House officials then?
I do have to point out, though, that both sides, they do things with intention. And this is part of politics. So the timing of the files released is a bit suspicious. As you know, recently the government was forced to shut down. I think they just barely reached a deal, and they're about to reopen again and not shut down the government. It's very interesting that the timing of the document are released, and I think it's not a really good intention because it means maybe the government may drawn into shutdown again, which cannot be good. But at the same time, this is very normal. There's nothing surprising here because it's just politics. However, no matter the timing, though, I think it is important for the public to see these files. I do support that.
Meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files.
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency?
In one email from 2011, Epstein writes, quote, "The dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted victim spent hours at my house with him. House Oversight Republicans earlier questioned why Democrats redacted the name, saying, quote, it's because this victim, Virginia Giuffre, publicly said that she never witnessed wrongdoing by President Trump. We have CNN's Caitlin Collins, who is live at the White House. Caitlin, we heard Levitt address this meeting at the White House.
Interesting. The thing is, we will never know, right? It's just these like tweets and these one-sided story. Who knows? Who knows, right? So basically, I think someone claimed that this is just all being fake because it was previously unredacted, and now they redacted again to make it sound suspicious. But it's hard to say.
House that's expected to happen today. It does include Congresswoman.
This is why I'm saying that what they should do is just release everything, not redacted. Like not just this email, but like everything.
Boebert, what have you learned about it?
Yeah, Brianna, two things stood out to me from that briefing. Obviously, Caroline Levitt was saying that they believe these emails prove that President Trump did nothing wrong. Obviously, he isn't accused of any wrongdoing. We made that clear in our reporting this email. They just shed new light on Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump multiple times in private correspondence.
Well, we know that they're close. That's for sure.
Over the span of about 15 years.
The question is, did he do it? Like, did Trump involve himself in something shady?
They did not deny
with girls
that Donald Trump spent time with Virginia Giuffre at Jeffrey Epstein's house. That is obviously what Jeffrey Epstein was insinuating in that email to Ghislaine Maxwell from April 2011. But obviously they were critical, highly critical of Democrats on the House Oversight Committee for releasing these emails that they got as a result of that bipartisan subpoena. But it was a pretty short briefing, Brianna. Obviously it was about 1:25 or so when the press secretary came out with the FBI director, Kash Patel, who gave an opening statement that was unrelated. It had to do with fentanyl and China. He left without taking questions. And then Caroline Levitt delivered her own opening statement before taking questions. So relatively few questions in that briefing there, but obviously several of them were about these new...
I think that's smart from a PR perspective, to do that. Keep things brief, short.
Emails from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell and to the author, Michael Wolff. And the other thing that stood out is that meeting that we exclusively reported on here at CNN, where the White House was hosting Lauren Boebert, a Republican congresswoman of Colorado, who has said, yes, she agrees that the White House and the administration should have to release all of their files related to Jeffrey Epstein that are inside the Justice Department. They described it kind of as a routine briefing, as you heard her saying there, about transparency, that when members of Congress want to be briefed, that they should be briefed. Let me tell you, Brianna, it is incredibly unusual for the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and the FBI Director to brief a single member of Congress. They weren't briefing her because she was the chair of a committee on a pressing matter. If she wanted to talk about the Epstein files, and that is what they talked about, it is unusual to have that high level of Justice Department power sitting down here at the White House with a Republican congresswoman. But what also stood out from that is Caroline Levitt is confirming our reporting that, yes, that meeting did take place. And of course, a question is the White House's effort to try to get some of these Republican members to take their name off of that petition, and whether or not it will be successful, that still remains to be seen. But to describe that as a routine briefing, it is certainly not, Brianna.
Yeah, and as you are certainly aware, because you've reported so many times on meetings, it's not unusual for when the president wants something from someone to have them to the White House for a meeting. So it's really interesting to see. That's something that certainly raises.
Well, yeah, obviously Caroline represents the Trump, because Trump appointed her, and also right now Trump's the president, so he controls all of these things, including responses and things like that. The press, people. Then he doesn't control the news anchors, but he controls Caroline, which is the press secretary. Yeah.
Questions. Caitlin, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Boris?
Let's get some perspective now from Dave Ehrenberg, a former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. Dave is known Attorney General Pamela.
Also, didn't Trump also appoint a new FBI director as well?
For many years, he worked as her drug czar in the Florida Attorney General's office. Dave, thank you so much for being with us. Generally, I wonder what you make of the correspondence that we're seeing between Epstein and his associates.
Boris, good to be with you. I think it's bad for three people in particular. First, Donald Trump, because this is a story that won't end. It's not going to end until the files are released. It's a drip, drip, drip. And there's no indication that President Trump did anything illegal, but his association with Epstein is what it is, and he needs to get...
Yeah, so it's kind of like vague. If you read that email, something happened, could have happened, or something didn't happen. We don't know. We just know that he was there with the girl, and also he is close to Epstein. But who knows what that means?
In front of this story, instead of letting
this is why they should just release the files.
Find him, because he's sitting back and there's just a constant drip of information that makes him look bad and makes his supporters wonder what's going on. And that demand for the release of the files ain't stopping anytime soon. It's just going to increase the clamor for those
and
files.
It's the right thing to do. They really should release them.
To be released. Number two, it makes Ghislaine Maxwell look like the liar she is. And I don't think she's going to get that pardon or commutation of her sentence anytime soon, because she said that she doesn't remember seeing President Trump ever visiting Jeffrey Epstein at the house. Well, the emails show that she does recall that. In that email, she reminds Jeffrey Epstein she remembers that when Trump would visit Epstein at the house. And then third, Michael Wolff, who's a journalist, but it looks like he's giving free legal / PR advice to a pedophile. He needs to come clean as to what this is all about.
There's one email in particular that we don't have context for, in which Epstein mentions Trump. He refers to him as the dog that hasn't barked. And notably, Republicans on the House Oversight Committee identify the person who's redacted in this note as Virginia Giuffre, who has never accused Trump of wrongdoing, but these emails show that Epstein says Trump spent hours with her at my house. I wonder just what you make of that, and the argument from Republicans that that redaction in itself is meant to imply something that Giuffre never accused Trump of.
Yeah, it's correct. I do think the Republicans have a point here that the name Virginia Giuffre was redacted, but Virginia Giuffre, in her book and in public statements, has never accused Trump of anything improper, said that he didn't do anything improper. The question is whether or not they spent time at Epstein's home. That's still an open question. So, and also, Virginia Giuffre...
Yeah, it's also not proven that she has spent time there, I guess. Yeah. So they have to prove that as well. I think they should have secondary sources, like maybe a camera footage or something. But I do think multiple evidence and sources is needed.
Had some issues in the past of credibility, which is why she wasn't called as a witness in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. But the fact that Epstein says that Trump spent hours with Giuffre at the house,
this is very
tells
suspicious.
me that there's still more that we don't know. And it is consistent with Trump saying that a reason why he broke off the friendship with Epstein is because Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were poaching employees from Mar-a-Lago in Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that was Trump's argument. Yeah.
I wonder what you think.
We just don't know. At the end of the day, it's like he said, she said kind of thing.
That members of the administration, including Attorney General Bondi, are presenting right now to Congresswoman Boebert, given that this discharge petition, at least as of the latest math that we've seen, appears to be on its way to passing the House. It's unlikely to get anywhere in the Senate. Very unlikely President Trump is going to sign it after being so vocal in his opposition of it. But it does put members of Congress on the record. So I wonder what you think she might be being presented with that us as members of the public may not be seeing.
I'm not sure. I think it perhaps is just some information on what's in the files that have been kept from the public, perhaps giving her an insider's view because she is a swing vote there and they don't want this stuff to be released, which is a shame because when you have Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who were campaigning for it to be released for many months, saying that there's an Epstein list and we need transparency. And then when they get to be in charge of the FBI, they're saying nothing to see here. So you have the base clamoring for the release, and Boebert is known as a MAGA.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. It's part of their campaign promises. So I think they should just do it, regardless of whatever impactful stuff that there is. I think they should just release it.
forward, and perhaps they think that she was about to join Marjorie Taylor Greene to release the files. So they're trying to placate her, perhaps by showing, hey, there's nothing to see here, no need to release it. But Boris, I don't know if the Senate is going to resist the release of the file after all this stuff is coming out. I mean, there's going to be more and more pressure every day to release these files because this issue is never going to go away until they are given to the public.
Yeah, we'll see how the Senate
Yeah, I do
ultimately
fully
handles
support.
it.
They
That
should
is-
just like release the files, no matter what. Even if you're a Trump supporter, this is actually a good thing for everyone, for Trump, for everyone, and also for the public to actually get justice. Like justice is just so important, and I also just think that he has nothing to lose. He's already the president. They're not going to force him out, right? He may as well just like release the files, so that all the victims can have some sort of peace and, you know, go after those perpetrators. This is the second video, by the way.
And in breaking news.
All right, we do have breaking news in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, minutes ago, literally, releasing emails that they say were written by Jeffrey Epstein that explicitly, specifically mentioned Donald Trump by name and in context that we really haven't heard before. Let's get right to Caitlin Collins, who's got the
So Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times in private correspondence
Yeah,
that
we've
he
seen that
had
in the
with
other video.
people, including
But
Ghislaine Maxwell,
is anything
obviously
new
his
here
longtime
in the
associate
context-
and accomplice,
context
and
of the
also
email?
the author Michael Wolff in a time span of about the last 15 years or so in these emails. Now, these are coming out from the House Oversight Committee. They had issued a bipartisan subpoena to Jeffrey Epstein's estate, John, as you know, earlier this year. And so they've gotten their hands on a trove of documents. And these are emails that included Jeffrey Epstein on them. They were sent either to him or from him that mentioned Donald Trump before he was in office and also while he was in office during his first term. And I want to walk you through these emails of what exactly we are reading in Jeffrey Epstein's own words in these emails that have been released by the House Oversight Committee. And in one of them, Jeffrey Epstein says, and I should note, Trump did not send or receive any of these messages. He's not a party to these emails, John, but these are emails from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. This is one from April 2nd, 2011. And in this email, Jeffrey Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell and says, quote, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump.
We've seen this
There's
in
a
the
name
previous
that's
video.
redacted, which the House Oversight Committee has said is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. Obviously, we have not been able to independently confirm that because her name is redacted from this email. But they say redacted spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." Ghislaine Maxwell responds to that email, John, and says, quote, "I have been thinking about that." Now, there's no context for that message in this
this
release
is
of
new.
what we're getting. Obviously,
What did he say?
context.
Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls. He asked to stop.
For that
Okay.
message in this release of what we're getting.
So
Obviously,
I think Trump
this
at
is a
least
time
knew
span,
about it.
and this
then
was about
from
3
this.
years
It
after
looks
Jeffrey
like
Epstein
it
had
appears to be
accepted
Trump.
what is
Trump
now
at least knows about what's going on.
known as that sweetheart deal that only got him
Now
a
the
few
question
months
is,
in
did
prison.
he do anything appropriate though? That's what we
and
want to
something
know.
that came under a ton of scrutiny during Donald Trump's first term in office because of his then Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, who helped negotiate that plea deal, that sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein at the time. And so that's the context of this came about 3 years after he had negotiated that plea deal, John. And there's also other emails that have been released by the committee this morning, including between Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. People will remember Michael Wolff, of course, the author who wrote a book on the inner workings of Trump's West Wing back in 2018 during his first term. He is someone who has talked at length about his own correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, published audio recordings of those conversations between the two of them. And in another email, and this seems to be a reference to Donald Trump saying that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club, and Jeffrey Epstein writes to Michael Wolff and says, quote, "Trump said he asked me to resign." And he adds, John, "Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop." Now, again, we don't have the context of this email,
So
but
at
John,
least
that
I
comes
think
as
at
a
least he knows about it. I think Trump, he's letting so that definitely I think he sort of partially lied about. But the main question though is, did he do anything inappropriate?
Months, we've heard President Trump himself and the White House say that Jeffrey Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago for being a creep, and Trump himself told reporters on Air Force One that he was trying to poach women, he and Ghislaine Maxwell, from the Mar-a-Lago spa, and that was why they had such a falling out and why he ultimately asked Jeffrey Epstein to leave the Mar-a-Lago club. Now, there's also a third email in here, John, and this is, again, in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. And Michael Wolff emails Jeffrey Epstein, and this is back in December 15th, 2015, so the height of the 2016 campaign, just to put that in perspective for you. And it was the day of a CNN Republican primary
That's when
debate.
Trump won his first term, right?
And Michael Wolff says, quote, "I hear that CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards." And Epstein wrote, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" Michael Wolff responded at length, John. I'll summarize it, but he said in regards to Trump, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt." Now, I'll note, John, we looked at the transcript of that CNN debate
This
from
is so
December
corrupt. This whole entire email is so corrupt in so many ways.
2015. There's no mention of Jeffrey Epstein in there, and of course, as I
So
mentioned,
evil as well. Try to like blackmail like presidents and or president-elect or potential president nominee. It's all sorts of wrong.
Donald Trump himself is not a party to these emails. But what this
Yeah, that's
shows
also an important thing to note. Like, Trump did not directly involve himself in these emails.
is Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times at a moment here in Washington when their relationship has come under incredibly intense scrutiny, John.
Caitlin, as you mentioned multiple times, we just don't have the context surrounding any of these emails. But that first email you read, the language absolutely jumps out to me. This is April 2nd, 2011. Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell, "I want you to realize the dog that hasn't barked is Trump, blank." And blank here.
It's really hard to decipher these, like how accurate it is and what they mean. It's so vague, but like based on language, right? Purely language. The dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Does that mean that Trump hasn't done it, but they're trying to entice Trump into doing it? Like Epstein and his cronies are trying to get Trump to do inappropriate things with the girls, but Trump has not yet done it, at least by April 2nd, 2011. Is that so that if I was deciphering this email, that's what sort of things I will come up with, sort of conclusion-wise. But again, I think one source is not enough. They need multiple sources of evidence. They need really, really massive amount of charges and evidence before they can even try anything. Because as I said, like Donald Trump is the president, and presidents are not usually trialed or not usually like suffering major consequences. At least none so far. So
is one of the alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
they need like damning evidence.
Spent
many of them.
hours at my
Many different sources.
house with him being Trump. He has never once been mentioned.
To even have a shot.
Now, again, we don't have the context surrounding that, Caitlin, but this kind of language from Jeffrey Epstein himself, how often has Donald Trump, what has Donald Trump said about contact he may have had or time he may have allegedly spent with some of Epstein's alleged victims?
Yeah, and John, just to be clear, the woman, the person whose name is redacted here was redacted by the House Oversight Committee before they put this out. That has been a huge point of focus as people have demanded the release of these documents, is to be able to protect the survivors and the victims. We have not been able to independently verify who this person is. The committee is...
It is, I think, important to protect the survivors, but at the same time, we need, like, I think we just need those files released, because then nothing's gonna happen. So it's either like nobody speaks out, that's the safest, or everybody speaks out. If there's so many whistleblowers and there's so many, they can't just murder everyone. They can't just like silence everyone or bribe everyone, right? So it's either a teamwork kind of thing, like everybody whistleblows and just release the whole file, or I can see where there might be some sort of problem with safety.
The one doing the redacting here, but obviously he is referencing someone who Jeffrey Epstein
But from a
says
justice
in this email
point of view, I think it's just worth it to just release all the files.
from 2011 that spent time with Donald Trump at his house. And so we've asked the White House for comment on this morning. Obviously, these are emails that predate his time in office this term. They span about 15 years, this correspondence that's being released. And Trump has denied that he knew anything about what Jeffrey Epstein was doing and the sex trafficking of young women. And he said that he wasn't aware of that at the time. And obviously, Trump himself has not been accused of any wrongdoing. It's very important that we make that clear here, John. But of course, the question has been when it comes to regards to the Justice Department and what they've released about what they know. And Adelita Grijalva is being sworn in today. She's the new House Democrat from Arizona, and she's expected to be that 218th signature. And so the pressure has been building on not just Democrats, but Republicans here in Washington to release more information about what the Justice Department has. And so looking at that email, obviously, will likely only increase that pressure to do so. And you're right, John, we don't know the context of that. But obviously you can read Jeffrey Epstein's words in and of itself and take away, obviously, what you will from that.
Oh, yeah. It begs many questions to be asked, perhaps to the president or the White House. You've already put this to them. Much more on this ahead. Caitlin Collins,
And
thank
can I
you
say,
so
John,
much. Oh, please.
I just want to say, because obviously, you know, we're breaking this morning. We did get a comment from Michael Wolff himself on this. I reached out to him to ask for any context on these emails, for anything from him. And he said, quote, I don't quite remember the context, but he says, I was engaged then in an in-depth conversation with Epstein about his relationship with Trump, and this seems to be part of that conversation. We have not yet gotten a comment from the White House. Obviously, they were going through these emails themselves this morning, and we will let you know what they have to say about it and what the president himself has to say about it, John.
All right, all of this developing before our very eyes. Caitlin Collins breaking this for us this morning. These emails, which we haven't seen before, where Jeffrey Epstein explicitly mentions Donald Trump by name over the years in different circumstances. Caitlin, thank you very much.
I think this is definitely one of the biggest scandals by a sitting president. However, in the past, president had scandals before. I think whether if he's guilty or not, I think one point is that it's very hard to use this to bring Trump down, even if he is very guilty of it. Point number two is that for justice purposes and for all the victims and to have some sort of justice, I feel like these should all be released. All the documents should just be released, unredacted, and all the whistleblowers should just all stand united and come out. And that's, I think, the only way we're going to get some sort of justice. Even if we don't get, even if we get the other people, like not Trump, but all the other people that are involved, it's still a win. It's still worth releasing all the files unredacted.